Good morning. Thanks for the invite to what's a really interesting set of sessions about what's a massively exciting and changing landscape in machine learning and sentiment analysis. I was just thinking, this is actually, I think I've now done a financial technology conference on every side of Grosvenor Square now. I think there was one the other week, there was one here, there's one there, each hotel. I can tell you, to review each of the hotels, all the coffee, terrible. I mean, it's always awful. These conferences, I don't know how they do it, it's always terrible. I was actually sitting having a coffee at one of the conferences last week, or a few weeks ago, with the head of asset management research, the technology department for a big buy-side research department. And he'd been, and there's all this sort of interesting talk about fintech and this revolution. And I said, is this exciting to you? Is this exciting? And he said, well, to be honest, no. He said, no. I'm really depressed about this whole thing because my managers have said to me, this is what they've said to me. They've said, all I want is I want a system that is fast, that is simple, but really sophisticated. Does all those cool AI things that you see on those ridiculous Watson commercials. And he said, Geoff, it's really hard. I've got, which technology stack should I use? Should I use a RDF triple store? Should I use MarkLogic? Should I use something from Cloudera? What should I use? Should I use my own training data? How do I get training data? Which taxonomies am I going to work with? How do I access the content? And then what's the user interface? How am I going to spend time with the actual, the research analysts or the portfolio managers? How am I going to spend time with them to understand what they want? Because their expectations are absolutely sky high. This is a really, really hard problem. And I said, well, I'm glad you're talking to me. At Thomson Reuters, this is what we do every day, right? We build databases, we manage content, we use natural language processing and sentiment analysis, we build professional software products and put them in the hands of very demanding professionals. And my job at Thomson Reuters is to take that technology, that data and that expertise, and to put it into your hands so you can go and build your own stuff. So with that said, we decided the coffee was really bad and we should go out and go to a pub and have a beer instead. And we had a very successful meeting, post-meeting, after work. And so we talked further and said, what is it that asset managers are trying to do, right? They don't really care about machine learning or AI. They're trying to solve real business problems. And some of those problems are here. Traditional asset managers are beset by huge pressure, money moving into passive investment, cost pressure, trying to come up with a new, novel, different way of doing things when the margins are really being pushed hard. And even yesterday, the FSA came out and said, you're not competitive enough. And the process you're following to add value in your research process when you're making your investment choices, it's not transparent enough, it's not clear enough, you need to do a better job. So that's a big challenge for asset managers. They've got quants on one side and hedge funds on the other side, and traditional asset managers are really squeezed and looking for ways to improve what they're doing. They're also trying to then package information. This is more so on the sort of sell-side research area. How do I package the knowledge I have and deliver it out to institutional investors, retail investors, and to others, and make it, recommendation engine, make it insightful, make it clear what the knowledge I'm delivering you in my research report or on my commentary, making it connect with you. And then they also have that challenge that we're just learning more about, is how do I connect alternative data sources? I've got the deck of hose, I don't know what to do with it, right? I've got all these things, how do I actually get value from all these different alternative data sets? Those are just some of the challenges that we hear from our asset management customers. All of those require a degree of mastery over unstructured data. And we know 80% of data within financial firms is unstructured, right? If you want to do machine learning on time series data, that's brilliant. That's fantastic. That's really exciting. I'm not going to talk about that. Okay, I'm going to talk about unstructured data. So if you want to be a master in this type of data, what's the track record for doing it? Bad. The simple answer. Most research by PwC or by Accenture or IT Group or A-Team, most data transformation projects fail, right? They fail to deliver value. Why is that? Right? Why does that happen? This is normally the cycle, right? Executive maybe comes to one of these conferences and goes, oh, big data, that's the thing. We're going to get into big data because we have to do it, right? Let's have a big project. Okay, CTO, you do the technology evaluation. They spend time with Cloudera and Hortonworks and IBM and all these guys. They go, and every fintech, oh, we've got the best thing, we've got the best thing. Go, this is really confusing. Let's bring in a consulting firm. And the consulting firm, oh, we will charge you a couple of $1 million, but we'll make it easier for you and we'll design a perfect solution. What you need to do is go off and build a big data lake. Basically it's EDM, 2.0, do it all over again. And then essentially what happens is you kind of throw the stuff back up to your end user, your research analyst, your portfolio manager, and they just go, what the hell is this? Yeah, this is no use to me whatsoever. You put really bad data in, you pulled bad data out, you focused on the technology, it doesn't actually do what I need it to do, right? That's very often what happens. And so what we find is if we look at the projects that are successful, they follow lean principles. Everyone know what lean principles? No, sort of. Lean basically means, do a small thing, iterate quickly, test with your end user, very quickly and iterate, right? Do it cheaply and quickly. Don't spend 18 months building your system. And if you bring in the governance and expertise, right, you need to have expertise to manage data. It's not easy, right? You need to have expertise and experience. You really have to focus on the data. It's amazing how many customers we go to say, yeah, we've got this big data project, we've been going for 12 months. Now we're thinking about the data that we might put in there. How can that be? It's a big data project. You've got to think about the data first. It's all about the data. And then it's also, I think we've heard some things from what are the right tools for the job? What works for one data set might not work for another. Yes, Hadoop is great for some things, but it may not be the right technology for all your things. You have to think about the right technology. You can't be kind of theological about, it should be this tech or it should be that tech. And we see a combination of technologies normally working best. So why would anyone even listen to Thomson Reuters about this, right? Are we in the big data area? Are we in AI? The answer is yes, we're in all of those areas, right? You might not realize it. But this is our strapline, this is our official strapline. We provide the data technology and expertise for professionals to get trusted answers. And we do, right? We have data. We've been building databases and managing content for a couple of 100 years, 150 years. We have a huge technology organization that manages and works with that data all the time to get insights from it. And we have a lot of expertise, right? And I'll talk more about that as I go through. So let's focus on the data to start with. You're probably familiar, I guess, with Paul Julius Reuter, famous German immigrant, came to the UK, founded a business, started the first global news agency. We now have 3,000 journalists in 200 bureaus around the world. We also consolidate huge amounts of news from third parties. We kind of have an open platform for third-party news providers. And we distribute that around 2.5 million stories a year in ultra-low latency, right, directly to hedge funds, trading firms to trade directly off the news. And we've been doing that, obviously, for some time. These other ones you might not have heard of, right? I don't know if you've heard of them or not. Disclosure, the first global corporate filings business. We have a record of every single public company's publicly disclosed annual report, interim report, circulars, shareholder notes, everything that they've made available through their exchange or they're on their website for 50 years in 130 countries. Okay, if you want training data, we have training data. And it's all tagged with who the companies are, what it is, everything, right? So you don't have to manually go and do it. You can get it from us. We also have the largest collection of broker research. Huge amount of insight in there, 1,700 brokers going back to the 1980s. Huge amount of data there. And then, CCBN, which ultimately was acquired by TR as well, we have the largest historical set of corporate transcripts. So you've got what every single CEO, CFO has said, during their conference calls about their company. We have that transcribed and available, right? And we can deliver all these things. So we've been kind of working with unstructured data for quite some time, and we have a bit of experience in that. And so we kind of know, the thing about you talk about domains. These are very different domains. We have to train very different models to manage each of those different data sets. And then kind of on the technology side, we've been delivering our new sentiment product since 2008. Again, real-time, low latency, and new sentiment product, delivering our Reuters News. We also then said the tools that we were using to manage our unstructured data, why don't we just give those to our customers? We now have a free version of intelligent tagging. It's in our developer community. It's on permid.org website. You can go and look at it. Intelligent tagging is our natural language processing engine. Uses many of the techniques that we've talked about this morning. And that's available as a deployed piece of software or a hosted piece of software. You can run your content through it. And we said, you know what, when we're doing this work, to make our intelligent tagging system really work, we put that tagging system on top of all the information we have at TR. Right, the last 100 years of structured data we've been managing. So why don't we make that available to our customers as well? And so that's our knowledge graph, right? So it's the underlying metadata and structured content that we use to manage our business made available. And the thing that's coming out soon, which I'm really excited about, actually, this is one of the most exciting things I think we've done is, you talked about how do you create a good training set, how do you manage the lexicon, how do you enhance the model, how do you add a new taxonomy or add a new set of concepts to it. The way we do that in-house at TR, we're now turning that into a machine learning toolkit that, again, we're making available to customers to kind of have the same tools that we do to manage our data. So we have some history in text. So how do we put this together? So what we do is we all the data is unstructured. We put it through our natural language processing engine. We score that information also for sentiment, for novelty, other things, and then we put it into a big knowledge graph. We join it with other structured content. We join it into a big knowledge graph, and that's kind of it. Right? We're very excited about this, the possibility of that knowledge graph with all that information in there. The kind of possibilities are endless of the types of use cases that you can build on top of that. And I'll show you what some of those are in a second. But why am I talking about this slide now, the PermID? Well, we just talked about this, right? So if you have some domain knowledge, particularly in the financial industry, it's very unforgiving, right? I can't say I have a 70% confidence if this is a fact or this is not a fact, right? That's not good enough. It's a bit like saying, which of your 3 meals today would you like to contain poison? Breakfast, lunch, or dinner? It's 70% quality, guys. It's pretty good for machine learning, right? Which one of your meals today do you want to make you sick? Well, none of them, please. If you have that permanent identifier, if you have that metadata that says this is a currency, this is an industry, this is a company, this is a geography, this is this exact person, this is this exact company, that's incredibly valuable, right? Our text analysis tools don't just say we think this is a currency or we think this is a company. It says we know with high precision it's this exact organization, which links back to this exact other set of corpus of data that the rest of the financial market is familiar with and can connect to. We've made that permanent identifier open. It's under an open license, right? Under Creative Commons license. You can use it, you can embed it in your products, you can redistribute it. And we think it's a really helpful tool for the whole sort of fintech and data science community to kind of build on top of. Some of it you have to pay for, feed my kids and that kind of stuff, but a lot of it we're trying to open it up and make it accessible to people. Talk a little bit about our actual natural language processing system, intelligent tagging. We bought a company called ClearForest about 10 years ago. There's about 150 guys in Tel Aviv, guys and girls, I should say. And we've been working on this for that whole time. And what we do is, we extract, obviously, named entity recognition. And again, very, very high precision for organizations, for the things that really help you connect into the rest of the financial world. But also relationships, topics, locations, all of those things works very, very well on news, works very well on broker research. You can try in other domains as well. It hasn't been as well trained for those domains. We're very open and honest about that. You really have to do more domain-specific work, I think, to take it into those other areas. I asked our team in Tel Aviv, okay, I'm talking to a room of experts about sentiment and NLP. What should I say to them? And they said, well, talk to them about some of the hype. So I summarized this. And they said, look, what we find is this very simple algorithm, but if you have more data, is better than a super complex algorithm and the smartest stuff on not very much information. If you haven't got a lot of data, you're going to overfit things. They also said, really, one of the pitfalls we saw, and I was talking to that chap I mentioned at the beginning, is that if you kind of train your model in kind of isolation, some nice clean training data, right, you'll fail when you try and move it into production. So the training data has to really represent the real world, kind of warts and all. And so getting that part right is tricky. Cheating is a good idea, although I have to put an asterisk here. Reuters trust principles are supposed to be, trustworthy companies, so I don't condone cheating. Basically, we get too smart sometimes with the engineering, right? If you need to just create a whitelist, a blacklist of terms, your lexicon, that's what you need to be doing. If you need to go back to, in our case, go back to our analyst team or our journalists and say, can you just help us with some more training data? That's what you need to do. A great example is, tennis. It's tennis time of year. A company called Williams Energy. We don't want it to be tagged with Serena Williams. We just go in there and say, Williams Energy, it's not sports, it's energy, right? Very, very simple things, but you need to sometimes tweak and train those areas. So not cheating, but it's not the heavy engineering. Particularly challenging if you're trying to say, there's around 100 public companies that have a Samsung in their name, right? How do I uniquely identify which one is which? There's just no way around that. You really have to put a lot of time and effort into training your named entity recognition to pick those ones up. And that just takes time and effort to do that. Yeah. So that's our intelligent tagging system. This is the thing that I'm most excited about, is our knowledge graph. You probably know what knowledge graphs are. Everybody's talking about knowledge graphs these days. It really just means that I'm conveying some meaning alongside the data I'm delivering, right? So I've got an organization. I'm saying this is their supplier, this is their industry, this is their headquarters, this is their address. It's how we model all of our information at Thomson Reuters. We think we have the world's largest financial graph. We have about 2 trillion triples in the current product. Only has a few data sets in it right now. We have all of the metadata that we manage, everything in the whole of Thomson Reuters that's available. Our organizations, our people, officers and directors, research analysts, insiders, all people who are active in the capital markets. All equity instruments and quotes, our full supply chain data set. So we're delivering that in the format that probably you're used to working with when you're doing NLP and turning things into RDF into triples. Very, very exciting. The possibilities of doing inference and merging that or building on top of that is very exciting. And the final thing is, again, I talked a lot about how people are very technology focused when they start these big data projects. We've gone, well, how can we help with that? And we've actually got our own sort of big data integration platform. It's an application where you can merge and stitch all your information in there together. You don't have to try and build and engineer Hadoop and Solar and Cumulo and Zookeeper and all these technologies on top of it yourself. You can take an application and kind of do it yourself. And very quickly, in this case, I've got, 50 or 60 different data sources stitched into our knowledge graph, customers' data, other alternate data merged together. And I've got 2 billion paths of discovery, potential discovery across that data set. So that's interesting. So what does it kind of, I say, that's very well and good. What does it actually do? How does it help my friend I was talking to in Grosvenor Square? This is where I'm going to see if this works, okay? So you can identify risks. So in this case, everyone knows about Toshiba and Westinghouse, the whole sort of nuclear collapse that happened there. If you had been really monitoring and using NLP tools and tagging tools, you would have noticed that there was news articles. This is the collapse in share price that happened back in the beginning, I think February time. But if I go back through and all the stuff I've tagged in our historical corpus, you find that actually the date when this was first really announced and started to become a thing was a whole year earlier than when the share price collapsed, right? It's really amazing. The information was out there, the risk was out there, but it was buried in so much text. These are the kind of things asset managers genuinely missed. People were holding Toshiba right up until that share price collapse. They should have had advance warning. Asset managers are just buried under news and research. You can't keep on top of it all. So that's very helpful. Just a quick slide on sentiment. I'm not the expert in sentiment. I could talk more later about some of the webinars and sessions we've got around how to use Thomson Reuters sentiment on our news analytics product. But this is an example where, again, we have a large database of mergers and acquisitions, but when those M&A transactions first hit the wire, there's obviously a large impact. So you can look at sentiment. So we look at, in this case, we looked at positive sentiment, greater than a certain amount. We look at novelty. So you have to look at sentiment, but what about novelty, right? So if that story is the fifth story, in the last 10 minutes, right, then actually the signal was there when the very first story came out. So you can't be setting a trigger off again and again because by that point it's old news. The very first alert probably is the time to trade on that, and there'll be a decay away from that. And we have some analysis that sort of shows, what's the rate of decay of those kind of sentiment signals? How do you manage novelty? How do you handle when you've got the positive sentiment or negative sentiment? There's multiple companies, different types of topics, different news codes. We have a lot of research that shows kind of how to use this, and I'm happy to talk to anybody afterwards who's interested in that. One of the issues with knowledge graphs is it get very messy, very complex, very quickly. But it is very good for risk-type use cases when people want to explore and just navigate and do discovery. In this case, this is Tesla and Panasonic. Panasonic supply batteries to Tesla, okay? I might be interested in who else does Panasonic supply batteries to? Is Tesla unique? They're saying that the whole point that Tesla's so expensive is their battery technology is the best. Panasonic also supplies Toyota. It's on here somewhere. Okay, that's interesting to me. Let me find more out about that. That kind of managed discovery is very useful when you have, this is text and structured data, being brought together. Again, not trading signals, but just really simply managing the news flow for those asset managers is very useful. In this case, what I've done is I've taken a portfolio of stocks. I've looked at the knowledge graph around each of those portfolios. I've scored the connections I think are important. I've then scored all of the inbound tags from intelligent tagging across the news. And I said, there's 10,000 news articles that date. Give me the ones that are most relevant to me because there's something actionable I care about. We build simple interfaces like this with customers. Just to say, yeah, this is, you should look at Qantas because Zodiac is in your portfolio. And you can drill into it, go, okay, I wasn't following Qantas, I was following Zodiac, but actually Zodiac supplies Boeing. Boeing is Qantas only by Boeing, so good news for Qantas, potentially good news for Zodiac. It seems simple and straightforward, but it's actually quite hard to do that at scale. And that's what a knowledge graph and good high precision tagging allows you to do. More of the same, very similar. In this case, we've got a kind of timeline. This is all the news flow that's coming in. I'm not just giving you information about your portfolio, companies in your portfolio. I'm telling you this is important to you because of these specific connections back to your portfolio. These people, these companies, these industries. because with high precision, I've tagged those companies and people, and with high precision, I've made that connection through the knowledge graph. And we have a lot of customers doing this, building their own applications, embedding it into their workflow to kind of just move up that curve a little bit in kind of systematic processing of unstructured data. So I like this quote, graphs aren't new, knowledge graphs aren't new, but people are now seeing that they can be applied to these kinds of use cases. I think in the natural language processing world, people have always used knowledge graphs, but it's starting to actually be a really great way to represent some of these enterprise data problems. So just to leave you with this, that at Thomson Reuters, we have the data, we have the content, we actually have a lot of the tools that are really helpful in this area, and we have some expertise, right? We've been trying to do this. And part of our philosophy as a company is really to be very open, and we have free access to sets of that content, we have free access to those tools in our developer community, and we make our teams accessible, and actually somebody from our data science lab here, we do customer co-creation. We bring customers into our data science labs, ideate, help out. How can we help you with that problem? How can we make it simpler and apply some of these things for you? One of my colleagues, Danielle, is here today, and we can talk to Danielle afterwards. But that expertise we have as well, I think, is something that you maybe didn't realize that Thomson Reuters had. So thank you very much.